The morning sun was sharp and unforgiving as it poured across the school courtyard, highlighting every detail of the restless crowd. Students clustered in groups, laughing, trading gossip, and scrolling on their phones. It was a typical day, except for one girl, new, quiet, carrying herself differently from the others. She walked alone, her worn backpack dangling loosely from one shoulder, her long hair partially covering her face as though she wanted to hide behind it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ground, not daring to meet anyone else's gaze, though she could feel it, every stare, every whispered word that followed her movements. She had been at this school only 2 weeks, but already she felt the weight of being marked as different. Some noticed her accent, others commented on her clothes that weren't the newest or trendiest, and many simply disliked the fact that she didn't try to fit into their shallow standards. The whispers trailed her like shadows, and she tried her best to shut them out. But in a crowded place like the courtyard, silence was impossible. Near the far side of the courtyard, leaning casually against the wall, was a group of boys who considered themselves untouchable. They were the kind of kids who thrived on making others uncomfortable, who measured their popularity by the humiliation they could inflict on someone else. Their laughter was always loud, their presence always disruptive, and other students rarely dared to challenge them. Today, their eyes locked on the new girl the moment she appeared. "She thinks she's too good to talk to anyone," one of them sneered under his breath. "Watch this," the ringleader smirked, adjusting his cap as he pushed himself off the wall. The girl didn't notice him at first. She had trained herself to move quietly, blending into the background, but it was impossible to completely avoid attention. She was halfway across the courtyard, her footsteps measured, her body language calm, when the ringleader closed the distance. He stepped directly into her path, forcing her to stop for a fraction of a second. And then, without hesitation, he reached out, patting her hip like she was an object he owned, his hand retreating as quickly as it had moved. The sound of laughter exploded instantly. His friends doubled over, slapping each other on the back, their laughter sharp and ugly, echoing across the open courtyard. Students nearby gasped, some covering their mouths in disbelief, others turning away quickly as if pretending they hadn't seen. For a moment, the entire space seemed to pivot around that single act. The girl froze where she stood, her breath caught in her throat, her eyes wide in shock. Heat rushed to her face, her cheeks burning with humiliation and fury all at once. She wasn't just startled, she was outraged. Her body stiffened, her hand instinctively clenching into a fist at her side. But on the outside, she didn't move. To the bullies, her stillness looked like weakness, and they laughed harder, convinced they had broken her spirit in public. "Lighten up, it was just a joke," the boy sneered, his grin wide, his friends egging him on with cruel laughter. The girl's heart pounded in her chest, the sound like a drum echoing in her ears. She could feel the stares of dozens of other students burning into her skin, could feel the weight of their silent expectations. She knew what they were thinking. She's new. She won't fight back. She'll just take it. That was what the bullies were counting on, too. They wanted her to shrink away, to be the quiet, easy target they could push around for their amusement. But what they didn't know was that she was not as fragile as they imagined. Behind her calm expression, she was assessing, calculating. Her father had always told her that there were two ways to handle moments like this, with fear or with power. And while the bullies thought they had stolen hers, she was already preparing to show them just how wrong they were. The courtyard buzzed with tension, every student waiting to see what the new girl would do. Some whispered nervously to their friends, others leaned forward as if they were watching the start of a movie. The bullies, arrogant and overconfident, laughed loudly enough to drown out the murmurs, their eyes glinting with cruel satisfaction. They thought the scene was over, that they had won. But the girl hadn't spoken yet. She hadn't moved, and in the silence that followed their laughter, something in her posture shifted ever so slightly. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and turned slowly to face them. The courtyard, still buzzing moments before, seemed to hold its breath. The bullies didn't realize it, but the balance of power was about to change, and the girl they had mocked was about to make them pay in a way they never expected. The laughter still rang in the courtyard, but the new girl's silence had already begun to feel different. It wasn't the silence of someone afraid, it was something heavier, charged, like the calm before a storm. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto the ringleader. His smug grin faltered just slightly, though he tried to mask it with bravado. His friends chuckled nervously, sensing something in her steady gaze that made them uncomfortable. The girl didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch, didn't look away. She simply reached out with one swift, precise motion, her hand shooting out like lightning. Before the boy could react, she caught his wrist midair, gripping it tightly. A sharp gasp rippled through the students who had gathered to watch. The ringleader's cocky smirk twisted into surprise, and then into pain as her grip tightened. His eyes widened as he tried to yank his arm back, but she didn't let go. "What are you doing?" he stammered, his tone suddenly less confident. Her voice was low, calm, and chillingly steady. "Don't you ever touch me again." The words sliced through the courtyard like a blade. For a moment, the only sound was the creak of his sneakers on the pavement as he tried to wriggle free. His friends shifted uneasily, glancing at each other, unsure whether to step in. This wasn't the reaction they had expected. She wasn't crying. She wasn't running away. She had turned the tables so quickly that even the audience of students was left stunned. The ringleader hissed in discomfort, his cocky demeanor slipping further as she angled his wrist just enough to remind him that she had control. She didn't need to hurt him. Just a twist, just enough pressure, and the message was clear. His bravado cracked under the weight of her composure. "Let go," he barked, but his voice wavered, and everyone could hear it. She leaned forward just slightly, her eyes never leaving his, her grip firm but controlled. "This isn't a game. Learn some respect." Whispers spread through the courtyard like wildfire. Students leaned in closer, their eyes wide, their phones discreetly raised to record. The scene had shifted completely. The bully who had strutted so confidently moments ago now looked like a child caught doing something shameful. Finally, she released his wrist, and he stumbled back, clutching it and glaring at her with a mix of embarrassment and fear. His friends, who had been laughing moments ago, stood frozen, unsure of how to react. They had expected her to be another easy victim, someone to mock and discard. Instead, she had flipped the power dynamic in front of the entire school. The girl didn't step away. Instead, she took one deliberate step closer, narrowing the distance between herself and the group. The air seemed to thicken, the weight of her presence pressing down on everyone watching. She didn't need to shout to command attention. Every movement, every word, carried authority. Her voice was even, but it carried across the courtyard, clear enough for everyone to hear. "If you think this is funny, think again. I don't belong to you. I don't belong to anyone." The bullies shuffled awkwardly, their confidence crumbling. One of them muttered something under his breath, trying to laugh it off, but no one joined in this time. The audience wasn't laughing anymore either. They were staring at her, some with admiration, others with disbelief. The ringleader, red-faced and humiliated, opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. His bravado had been stripped away, and in its place was a look of someone who knew he'd been outmatched. He stepped back, his shoulders slumping slightly, his friends glancing at him for direction but finding none. Meanwhile, the girl adjusted her backpack strap, her movements calm and deliberate, as if she had all the time in the world. She hadn't shouted, hadn't lashed out wildly. She had simply shown them that their power was an illusion. The crowd murmured louder now, a mix of awe and excitement. Some clapped softly, almost testing the waters, and then others joined in, until the sound of applause echoed across the courtyard. The bullies, standing awkwardly in the center of it all, looked smaller than they ever had before. The girl didn't bask in the attention. She wasn't smiling, wasn't gloating. She was steady, composed, her chin lifted just enough to show that she was done hiding. She had made her point, and the bullies knew it. The entire school knew it. She turned slowly, giving the ringleader one last look that made him shrink further, then prepared to walk away. The courtyard wasn't laughing at her anymore. The balance of power had shifted, and she had claimed her place with nothing more than strength, control, and an unshakable will. The bullies had thought they could humiliate her, but instead, they had revealed just how weak they truly were. The courtyard was still buzzing with the aftermath of what had just happened. The bullies, once loud and full of arrogant laughter, now stood in uneasy silence, their bravado stripped away. The ringleader rubbed his wrist, still glaring but no longer daring to step forward. His friends shifted from foot to foot, their smirks gone, their confidence shattered. They had counted on the crowd to back them up, to laugh with them as they humiliated the new girl. But the crowd wasn't laughing anymore. The crowd was watching her. The girl stood her ground, shoulders squared, chin raised, her presence commanding in a way that was impossible to ignore. She adjusted her backpack strap and scanned the courtyard, her gaze sweeping over the rows of students who were frozen in place, waiting to see what she would do next. The silence stretched for a moment, heavy with tension, before she finally spoke. "Respect," she said, her voice steady and clear, carrying across the open space. "It's not optional. Not for me. Not for anyone." Her words landed like stones in a pond, rippling through the crowd. Students shifted, murmuring to each other, their whispers filled with awe. A few heads nodded in agreement, and others looked at the bullies with open disapproval. The bullies themselves shrank back further, realizing that the tide had turned completely against them. Where once they fed on the approval of their peers, now they felt the weight of judgment pressing down on them. The ringleader opened his mouth as if to argue, but the words died on his lips when he caught the look in her eyes. It wasn't anger, it was strength. Cold, unwavering strength that told him she wasn't someone to trifle with. He muttered something under his breath, barely audible, then turned slightly as though retreating. His friends followed suit, avoiding eye contact with anyone, their bravado dissolved into silence. The crowd, however, did not remain silent. It started slowly. One student clapped, tentative but determined. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the courtyard erupted into applause. Students stood, some climbing onto benches to get a better view, others raising their phones high to record. The sound swelled into cheers, the kind of raw, unfiltered support that couldn't be mistaken for anything but admiration. The girl didn't smile. She didn't bow or soak in the moment. She simply let the sound wash over her, her expression calm but unyielding. She hadn't defended herself for applause. She had done it because she refused to be broken. But deep down, she felt something shift inside her, a weight she had been carrying since she arrived at this school seemed to lift. For the first time, she wasn't just the quiet, invisible new girl. She was seen. Teachers had entered the courtyard now, drawn by the noise. Their eyes scanned the scene quickly, landing on the group of embarrassed boys and then on the girl standing proudly in the center. They didn't need to ask what had happened. The golden rule of school life was written all over the faces of the students. The bullies had picked the wrong target, and everyone knew it. One teacher stepped forward, her voice firm as she called out the boys by name, ordering them to the office. The ringleader hesitated, glaring one last time at the girl before shuffling away, his shoulders hunched, his pride in tatters. His friends followed, muttering to themselves but not daring to challenge the authority around them. Their exit was marked not by laughter but by humiliation. The echo of their downfall burned into the memory of every student who had witnessed it. The girl remained where she was for a moment, her backpack still slung over her shoulder, her body steady and composed. The applause continued until it became a roar, then softened gradually as the crowd began to disperse. Some students lingered, approaching her with hesitant smiles, offering words of admiration. "That was amazing. You showed them. They'll never mess with you again." She nodded politely, her responses quiet, almost humble. Inside, though, she felt something fierce, something stronger than pride. It wasn't just about standing up for herself. It was about drawing a line no one could cross again. She had taken control of her own story, and in doing so, she had made the bullies powerless. As she walked away, the golden afternoon light caught the confetti-like fragments of leaves drifting across the courtyard, and she felt the space behind her buzzing with whispers and applause that would ripple through the school for days to come. Students would tell the story over and over, how the new girl had turned humiliation into triumph, how she had faced down the bullies without fear. The bullies had thought they could define her with one act of cruelty. Instead, she had defined herself, with strength, courage, and a calm fury that made the entire school rethink what they thought they knew about her. She hadn't just made them stop. She had made them pay.